Actually, I think I was muted on YouTube a little bit. Now I'm just realizing it. So, yeah, I was muted on YouTube. So anyway, yeah, this is of course Four Verticals extra episode 205. Again, we're doing UNC and TCU preview, Camp Intel, transfer portal mess. Yes, the greeting was muted on YouTube. I apologize for that. So if you're wondering, yes, the last few minutes, yeah, we had no audio. I'm not really sure what happened there. It's whatever, but you guys can read the title and I think you guys should be fine if you're on Spotify. Just ignore all this. Anyway, so like I mentioned when you guys couldn't hear me on YouTube, UNC TCU game preview. Again, this is in Ireland, begrudgingly, again, because of the TV oligarchs and, this is an ATM. You have to, do things really stupid and put this game in freaking Dublin, Ireland. Don't hate Ireland. Never been there before, but I've always wanted to go there. Anyway, TCU UNC breakdown. This is a noon kickoff Eastern time on ESPN. Don't think we know the announcers yet. I'm assuming it's probably going to be similar to last year, like Dave Pash and Dusty Dvorak and that crew will probably be there. I think that's the crew, or who knows. Anyway, so I look at this game as kind of the vibe I'm getting here is a lot of folks are really going against North Carolina. A lot of folks are just assuming that TCU is going to come out and it's going to be a la last year where it was not a very competitive game outside of like the first 5 minutes, right? A lot of folks are going that direction again. Now, may I remind you that any of these games over in Ireland, particularly the last few ones, if you go back all the way to, what was it? Nebraska, Northwestern, weird game, right? Northwestern won the game, but they did not win a single game after that. So Northwestern that year in 2023, I believe, or 2022, did not win a single game in the United States of America. They only won one game, and that was overseas. So that game, weird. Florida State, Georgia Tech, weird, right? The upset, albeit wasn't really significant that much in hindsight because obviously Florida State only won two more games. Only won 2 games that year. So, and I love, of course, at the moment, we didn't know that. But that game, Georgia Tech, Florida State, 2024, weird game. Last year, Kansas State, Iowa State, weird game. So, North Carolina at least has it on their side that any of these games in Ireland are always really, really weird. Okay, things don't always go perfectly. Not to mention, it's the first game of the year for both of these teams. You're going overseas. Right, a lot of distractions going on, and most of these guys hadn't really even been to Europe before. I'd imagine most of these guys have probably never even heard of Ireland before. And maybe they have, but they probably haven't even been over there before, let alone even thinking about going over there. So yeah, that factor on your side for UNC. That any of these games over in Ireland, over there, across the ocean, over there in Europe, have always been really, really, really weird. That they have not always been the favorite team winning, right? Again, we've just mentioned it, right? They've the last few times, at least from what I can remember, there have been upsets. Okay, again, Northwestern beating Nebraska, Florida State losing to Georgia Tech, and last year Iowa State beating Kansas State, right? So there is a lot of weirdness going on here. There's a lot of weird vibes going on with this game in terms of the fact that it's overseas, and there is a history here of the team that is not favored winning this game. So that's on the side of UNC. The other side of UNC here that I'd like to present, if they were to pull off this upset, is really and truly how motivated it is North Carolina. Given all the distractions and what's going on with Bill Belichick and him and his girlfriend and all the the stuff going on with Michael Lombardi, him being suspended and whatnot, how motivated are they? Because again, this is the first game of the year for them. Okay, first game of the year. Most teams. And their first games, even the really bad teams, even Florida State in 2024, even Auburn in 2012, similar situation, playing a good team on a neutral site. Games are both competitive, even though both of those teams lost. It was still one of their better games of the year. That can happen sometimes, even with a team that no one's expecting to be very, very good, that no one's expecting to be relevant in the sport this year. Even in those years, you have one game a year, maybe 2 games a year, where you really see a team like UNC be motivated, right? This being the first game, haven't lost a game yet. Your back's against the wall. Everyone's against you and your head coach. At least I'm assuming there's a possibility here. The North Carolina could be really using that as extra motivation, right? Sort of using the external factors to create motivation and to make them more or less amped up than they usually would be, right? And also, not to mention, it's a revenge spot for them after what happened last year. So that's one factor here. I just want to wonder before this game kicks off and as it begins, how motivated is UNT? Because we don't know early how motivated they are going to be. Okay, especially if if they get the ball first and they score and they're able to get momentum built up and they get a stop on defense and things start to go their way. That will tell you a lot how motivated they are, at least in this game. But if it's the opposite and TCU stops them or whatever on their first drive and they go down and score and the avalanche really starts to happen, then that's really and truly a bad sign for UNC, that they're just not motivated. So again, with a fragile roster and a fragile team like UNC is right now, that's one thing I really want to emphasize is how motivated are they? Because if they're motivated, given what they've done in the transfer portal and who they brought in as their offensive coordinator and actually upgrading their coaching staff, then this team could be a little bit more competitive than I think people think, if they're motivated. Thirdly, how can Bobby Petrino's offense be consistent? Bobby Petrino is a very, very good offensive coordinator, right? Maybe not so much as a head coach, the latter years of his time at Louisville, post Lamar Jackson, and yes, the off-the-field issues at Arkansas. All of that withstanding, Bobby Petrino is still one of the best offensive coaches in college football. He still is. And even at Arkansas last year in A&M, he was still pretty good. And I think a lot of folks forget that. I mean, they were still scoring a lot of points last year. Yes, the defense for Arkansas last year, but completely atrocious. But I just want to know, can it be consistent? Okay? Can they at least score enough points? Can Bobby Petrino scheme up something against this TCU defense, which really, truly, we don't know how good they will actually be because, again, it is the Big 12, and typically they don't really play defense out there, usually. That's one thing I do. That's another thing I want to see is that how consistent can that offense be? Ties into the motivation thing, but kind of does have a little bit of a section on its own. Because again, if this offense can be really, really good, consistent, they can get utilize tight ends, right? Get the spread out TCU's defense. Do some stuff that they did not do last year necessarily. That'll be interesting. So I'm very, very fascinated to see how this offense with Bobby Petrino will work out. The third part for UNC, if they're to win this game, is that Jaden Craig, the new starting quarterback, I believe he was at Yale or something like that before. He's replacing Josh Hoover, who is at Indiana now. And Josh Hoover and company carved them up last year like a Thanksgiving turkey. So I'm just wondering, given the brain trust or supposed brain trust that Bill Belichick is and his son Steven, which I believe he is the defensive coordinator, can they do something to confuse Jaden Craig, who has not played a whole lot of big-time college football at this level? This is his first time being a starter in the FBS. He was in the FCS, I believe, last year, and he's transferred over. I believe that's the story with him. Can they do something to confuse him? Can they maybe, bring in some different defensive packages? Can they just make him really, really overwhelmed? Because, again, this is the first game for both of these teams. And with TCU bringing in a new starting quarterback, that is something that, I'm interested to see how would this look. But there's also the other side that TCU can basically do what they did last year, the whole blitzkrieg tactic, right? You go on your opponent quickly, don't give them a chance to come back, you make them quit early. They do run, of course, the air raid offense, which is basically what most teams in the Big 12 basically run and have been running for, at least for the last 15 years. So that's definitely going to be a challenge for them. And also, too, Sonny Dykes is a very, very good coach. Again, a lot of folks forget this, coaching staff, or at least the coach, the same guy who was there when TCU made his national title. Now, yes, a lot of folks forget that for obvious reasons, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't respect him. He's still a very good coach, and they still have done a very good job there of keeping things consistent somewhat. I know the year after they didn't go to a bowl game, but the years following the 2024 season, they sort of got back to where you would imagine TCU being, right? An 8-win, 9-win football team, right? So Sonny Dykes, I believe from the coaching standpoint, overall coaching standpoint, if you're including the head coaches, Sonny Dykes is a better college football coach than Bill Belichick. Let's just put it there. But again, like I mentioned here on the graphic here, and like I mentioned a few minutes ago, if if they were to win this game, not motivation stuff aside, how would this offense look for them? Can Bobby Petrino's offense with the new starting quarterback and all these new faces on the team, Can they score enough points to keep up with TCU? If it ends up being a higher scoring game, maybe against into the 30s or the 40s, maybe. Can they keep up with them? Because I don't know if they can. I don't think they have the personnel that Petrino wants to have or what he needs to be successful with. He had it at Texas A&M for sure. They sort of had it at Arkansas. I don't know if he has that at UNC. Maybe he does. Maybe they do score up points to keep up with TCU. Very much so possible. So enough of us talking about this game. Let's go to what the graphic says here, or the I don't know what you call this, the game capsule, I guess, or the actual pick. Now, what we are doing this year for our show, if you're new here, we typically don't usually have, or at least we've never done a model that will help us, will sort of give their own, like, a different outlook on the game versus the FanDuel number, right? And for the last couple of years, we haven't done that. I thought about doing it, but we just didn't have the opportunity to do so. We didn't have the, benefit of having, stuff like AI to help create a model. Now we have that. So we're going to do here in a minute here. We're about to debut our model. Now, I'm not going to show you guys what the model looks like, but I'm going to show you what the model thinks along with the FanDuel number, and we'll obviously go into our actual pick here. So let me go up here and bring up our little graphic here for those on YouTube and on Spotify. Obviously, you guys won't be able to see it, but anyway. All right, so the FanDuel line on this game is TCU minus 7.5. Okay, that's been the number for the last ever since numbers came out months ago. So that's not really changed that much. Our model, our in-house model, pretty much right in line. TCU minus 7. So again, the FanDuel number, TCU minus 7.5. Our in-house model has a TCU minus 7. So it's in an agreement. And I do agree with the model and the FanDuel number. I think TCU wins. I think they cover. I just don't know, again, how motivated is UNC. Again, if they are motivated, and if Petrino's offense can do some stuff, he can scheme some things up and use what he likes to use, the tight ends and whatnot, if they're actually going to be good enough, and they can score up TCU and keep up with them in a high-scoring game, which I think this might be, then there's a possibility here. But I don't personally think that's going to happen. I think TCU wins. I think they do end up covering the game. And be interesting to see what happens here with UNC. If our fears are correct, that this is a lost season for them, the distractions are way too much, there's too much turmoil going on behind the scenes, does this thing sort of go into, I don't know, what would you call it, like the spiral phase of the escalation trap? They're already up the escalation trap already. They're already up multiple rungs of the ladder. They just haven't gone into like the spiral phase of the escalation trap, if you will, of the team's morale starts going down even before the season really gets going. And similar to last year, it just really, I think there's a really high chance that this could really spiral off control and things could get dark for them. Don't really like saying that. I'm not a big fan of saying that stuff. You guys know, if you've been watching this for a while, we've been doing this we've been doing this for almost 2 years, right? You've been a loyal fan watching this channel. I'm not a big fan of talking about hot seat stuff and whatnot and coaches being on thin ice, but I think it's real here. I think with UNC and Belichick, I just don't think this is sustainable. I think there is a real threat that it's probably done. And we will eventually see a regime change there. The signs are already there of, coaches and certain personnel already being taken out, if you will, from the regime. So, yeah, I just don't really think it's sustainable. I was never a fan of this hire to begin with. So, again, I have TCU winning and covering, and our model agrees with the FanDuel number. So, we'll see how accurate our model is. We'll use it again on Thursday, or we'll show you what it thinks for the Virginia-NC State game. We'll bring it up again. So, about that. Moving right along here, I'm going to get some water real quick. Parch the voice here, and then we'll move on to some quarterback news. A lot of starting quarterbacks being named here. Still some not decided yet, but we do have some names that have been finalized and whatnot. And we'll go through all of them, mostly in the SEC. There's still a couple. There's still 2 schools that are not that are non-SEC that still have quarterback battles going on. So we'll go over those here in a minute. So yeah, I'm gonna get some water. We'll come back. We'll be right back again. Apologies for the sound earlier on YouTube. I don't know what happened. I guess the sound was muted here on Restream. But anyway, I mean, it is what it is. At the very least, you guys got the the game preview and all that. That's all I'm pouring out. Reading here really gives a shit. So, all right. Again, if you guys are new here watching the show, I'm assuming some of you probably are, whether it's live or on the replay. Welcome in. This is college football season. A lot of folks believe it starts next week with actual week 1, which is probably true. But the real college football sickos know it starts this week. So if you are new here, buckle up. This is college football all year round. That's all we talk about. On the extra pod, we talk about other stuff as well, like Marvel news and Star Wars news and whatnot. But this is college football all year round. So if you're a big fan of college football, subscribe to the channel, like the streams, like the videos, follow us on the podcast feed, Instagram, X. You know where to follow us. And we have a lot of fun on those platforms too, but this is our main avenue of getting ourselves out there is on YouTube. So fall camp intel continuing. A lot of starting quarterbacks have been named. So let's go through all of them here. We'll break them all down. First up here, UF, Florida. John Sermon naming a starting quarterback. Shocker, it's Aaron Philo. He was the backup quarterback last year for Haynes King at Georgia Tech. Those Buster Faulkner, so there's familiarity there with the offense. Not surprised there. I think Aaron Philo brings stability. I think he brings experience, knowledge of the offense. Perfectly fine. I know a lot of folks were wondering if it was going to be Tramel Jones. He's more of a runner, and Aaron Philo is more of a pocket passer. I don't think Philo's a complete statue, so he will run maybe a little bit, but it's not. He's not going to run for like 1,000 yards. That's not. I'll be stunned if that happens, but he's not a statue either. So I know again a lot of folks are wondering, will they go the Tramel Jones route? Where we'll do a third guy fits what Buster was doing last year with Haynes King. I'm perfectly fine with this decision. Completely fine. If it's someone who knows the offense, experience of the offense, has a lot of connection there with the offensive coordinator, totally okay with it. I also understand, again, a lot of folks, Florida fans, even non-Florida fans, were hoping in some cases it was going to be Tramel Jones, which is, fine, I guess. And look, I like dual-threat quarterbacks too, but if this is what John Sermon wants, on face value, not knowing any other information other than what's being provided to us publicly, I'm okay with this. This makes sense to me. We'll see how it goes. Luckily for them, they have a good runway. They have, FAU, an FCS team, they go to Auburn. So the runway's easy after the first 2 weeks. Then it goes all the way up, and it's gets real in a hurry with going to Auburn. Which grants you, let's be real, going to Auburn nowadays, it's not really hard going to win at Auburn. It's pretty easy nowadays. I know a lot of folks there don't want to hear that, but who was it? Bud Elliott brings up the stat all the time. It's like, is Jordan Hero Stadium really that threatening? Yes, at certain times it is, but I will agree with him. Recent history, the last 3 years, it's not really pretty easy winning there. Really, who hasn't had success there? Heck, even New Mexico State had success had success winning there. Okay, so it's not really a hard place to go to and win, but still, for a new starting quarterback, it's going to be difficult. But it's not overly that hard. At least I don't think it's going to be. At least I don't think. At least recent history has said it's not. So Aaron Philo starting for UF, good. Meanwhile, their rivals up north go up Interstate 75 all the way. I guess to like Chattanooga, and you go off on Interstate 24 or something. I live in the southeast. I should know my geography. I really don't. At least the interstates. I do a little bit. Anyway, in Knoxville, Tennessee, we have a starting quarterback. It's Fazion Brandon. Not a complete shocker. I believe, who was it? George McIntyre or whatever his name is, the other kid. He has a little bit more experience. He played a little bit last year. Folks, I think at times you're thinking it was going to be him, but I think Fazion Brandon gives you an interesting, more interesting dynamic here, that he is a dual threat guy. He can run around. He can easily run. Unlike Aaron Philo, he could run for 1,000 yards. This guy's very athletic. His arm talent, that's part of the game. I don't know, but luckily for Tennessee's offense, again, if those of you don't know, the Veer and Shoot style of offense, the Baylor Brile stuff, it is not an air raid system. Okay, it is not an air raid system. A lot of folks get confused by that. It's not. Okay, it is not an air raid system. It is a run first offense. Yes, they do throw the football. Yes, they do have the wide receiver splits and it's close enough to the sideline where they can spin on the sideline. Yes, that is true to do that. But it is a run-first offense, and when this thing was humming, okay, especially with Hendon Hooker, who was Hendon Hooker, they built that quarterback. He ran for almost 1,000 yards. So that's what Fazion Brandon could bring here. He's a talented guy. He's a true freshman. He's a 5-star quarterback. He's still young, though. So this is not going to be a situation where you bring in someone who has a ton of experience. So it's the opposite of Aaron Philo, who has a lot more experience than Fazion Brandon, okay? So what I'm trying to say here is that Fazion Brandon, he's uber talented. And so, he can run around. I think him operating the offense, like in general, I'm not too concerned about because it is relatively an easy offense to learn, but it's hard to get. It's hard to understand or at least get the access to it. But I do I wonder with someone like Fazion Brandon, any of these young quarterbacks who will be starting across the country, it is not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. There will be mistakes. There will be games where he is going to throw a couple of interceptions. There will be games where we'll have multiple turnovers. There will be games where he will make a stupid, dumb decision. That's going to happen. So to anyone thinking, oh, this guy's going to, immediately be like Trevor Lawrence and, do all these amazing, great things. Let's hold on a little bit. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, given Fazion's ability to run the football, and also in addition to what Tennessee has at the running back position already, and along with the fact that, again, this is a more of a run-based offense, contrary to popular belief, I think this is the right decision here. Again, I think this is the smart decision to make. So, Fazion Brandon, starter for Tennessee. Now at Alabama, this broke over the weekend. Again, shocker. Keelon Russell, 5-star QB, starting quarterback. No surprise here. You kind of heard rumblings about this. Even, guys like Josh Pate were bringing it up because he has been to several Alabama practices over the last several months, going back to spring football, and he has been very much so on the side of, I think Keelon's going to get this job. And after listening to a lot of other folks, this guy is, suffice it to say, he is generational talent, is the truth. This guy is a generational talent. Or at the very least, borderline generational talent. This guy can run around, like basically say everything we said about Fazion Brandon. Apply that to Keelon Russell, but times 1,000. Like, this guy is uber talented. Definitely much more talented than what you had currently under Jalen Milroe, and also probably under Ty Simpson. Now, again, much like Fazion Brandon, I'm going to say the same thing about Keelon Russell. He is still young. He has not started a whole lot of games yet, obviously. He is still very much so a green quarterback. And again, there will be a game this year where he will struggle for sure. It's not going to be easy, at least all the time. Now, luckily for them, the runway is pretty simple, okay? A lot of their big games are either on the road against Kentucky early in the year, or you're playing Florida State at home, which is a revenge spot for you. And Florida State is probably a worse team than they were last year, right? So the runway here for Keelon Russell is very, very simple, okay? It's not overly hard. But much like with Aaron Philo at Tennessee, grant you it's a little bit longer of a runway, it does get real in a hurry. So there is going to be a time where you will have to have him, being Keelon Russell, go on the road and face teams like LSU and play teams like Texas A&M and play teams like Tennessee and eventually teams like Auburn and whatnot. That won't be as easy, and he will make mistakes. He will turn the ball over. He will make a dumb decision at some point during the season. Now, will it happen every single game, or will it just happen every 3 games or whatever? Who knows? I would more or less lean towards that the solution than the first one. So yeah, and then like I mentioned several weeks ago when talking about the quarterback battle for Alabama, I mentioned it really wasn't going to matter who the starter was going to be, whether it's Austin Mack or Keelon Russell. Both options are really good options, right? Austin Mack, same thing with him, and I do agree with Josh Pate. Whatever Austin Mack does in his future, whether he stays at Bama after this year or he goes somewhere else, don't be surprised to hear that, Austin Mack, he almost beat Keelon Russell, man. Can you believe that? Same thing they're saying about Lincoln Kineholtz at Louisville. Same thing, man. He pushed Julian Sand. Can you believe that? Insane. That's a real possibility. Now, is it guaranteed? No, it's not, but I wouldn't be surprised by it because I think both these guys are good options here. Austin Mack wouldn't have an issue with him, but Alabama, seeing who Keelon Russell is, they know a lot more about him in practice. Yes, is he, more erratic? Is he more, green, right? Is he, less seasoned than Austin Mack? Yes, that's true. But the floor is a lot higher, and the expectations are even higher for him. And I think those folks there in Tuscaloosa know that, and that's part of the decision making. They just got to go with the highest boom potential here. Definitely a lot of bust, but the potential, the possibilities are numerous with Keelon Russell being the starter. And like I mentioned, it really doesn't matter, to be honest with you. It could have been, if it was Austin Mack, I wouldn't have an issue with it. The reason why is, and I mentioned this before, they, being Alabama, have to run the football this year. They cannot have what they've been having the last, what feels like 4 years. They have not ran the football very well. They have to do that. They have to make sure that they can at least establish some sort of a ground game. Doesn't have to be draw this murder ball like it was with Nick Saban especially in the prime years. Doesn't have to be that. It can be like 40% of that, and that's still pretty good. That's better than what they've been doing the last 4 years, which has been screwing around, can't run the football. And when they try to run the football, it's not always very successful. And when they did run the football, most of the time, at least within the last few years, it was Jalen Rose scrambling and running around, right? So it doesn't matter who the quarterback's going to be. You have to run the freaking football. You have to run the football because they were really terrible doing it the last few years, especially horrible doing it last year. They have to get that fixed. If they don't get that fixed, it isn't going to matter who the starting quarterback is going to be, whether it's Keelon Russell or Austin Mack. You can't run the football. I mean, that's, again, contrary to popular belief, again, similar to Josh Heupel. Keelon DeBoer's offense is not an air raid offense. It is not an air raid offense. It is a run-first offense. Michael Penix in Washington almost ran for 1,000 yards. If it tells you anything about this offense, there's that. It is not an air raid offense. And that is the biggest misconception in college football. This is a run-first offense, similar with Tennessee. So Keelon Russell being the starter there makes sense to me, but it really doesn't matter if they can't run the football because Keelon cannot be the offense. Him run the football as much as, again, like I mentioned, I love doing with our quarterbacks, but he Russell, he cannot be the running offense. There has to be a running element in addition to him being a dual-threat quarterback. So there's that. Now at Vanderbilt, Jared Curtis, who is the 5-star quarterback. A lot of folks were wondering, he might be the starting quarterback, right? 5-star guy. You don't really, bring him in to ride the bench. Well, he sort of is. Blaise Berlowitz, I believe that's his name. Berlowitz. Yeah, Blaise Berlowitz. Starting quarterback there at Vanderbilt. Senior. Obviously a lot more experienced, obviously, than Jared Curtis. That doesn't mean Jared Curtis will be seen. I think as we go through the season, this has sort of been a talking point, even going back in the spring, that Curtis, contrary again to popular belief among the Vanderbilt fan base, probably won't be the starter immediately. They will probably, or at least the thinking was back then, and obviously it's true now, that they were going to go more the experienced route and maybe at some point bring in Curtis. Supposedly, according to Clark Lee, he is going to, he referring to Jared Curtis will play against Austin Peay. So, yeah, Blaise Berlowitz being the starter there. I think if you were keeping in touch with all these other shows and the intel coming in, that really shouldn't be a major surprise. But I think a lot of the folks who don't follow these quarterback battles to a T probably a little bit surprised that's not Curtis. But that doesn't mean he won't be playing. He's not the starter, but doesn't mean you won't be seeing him, maybe in a random drive or whatnot before, like if the game's not a blowout yet. So, Blaise Berlowitz starting quarterback there for Vanderbilt. Now at Clemson, still don't know who the quarterback is yet. It's, Tate Reynolds and Vizina. Thinking is still it's going to be Vizina originally, even though, I mean, look, it doesn't really matter, at least in my opinion. I think Clemson, at least in some ways, is a little bit underrated in my opinion. But again, I still can't shake off the fact that a lot of these recruiting, experts and whatnot were really not over the moon about Vizina coming off high school. They just weren't, which is interesting. But if knowing Clemson's history and knowing Dabo's history, starting Vizina over the true freshman quarterback, who again has a much higher ceiling, probably has a lot more potential, not as surprising. He's done this before. Dabo has. He did it with Colt Stout over Deshaun Watson in 2014. Kelly Bryant over Trevor Lawrence in 2018. So he's done this before, and he's doing it again, probably. So what I'm trying to say here, and I said this before weeks ago, that Vizina being the starting quarterback, not surprising. Him being the starter by the end of the year, I would be a little bit surprised by that. I do believe we will be seeing Tate Reynolds I think at some point take over. They're just too much higher. There's a higher floor with him than you'll be getting under Vizina. That's just the cold facts there. Again, so Clemson not decided yet. Probably going to be Vizina. At West Virginia, I haven't talked about Rich Rodriguez yet at all. Michael Hawkins, remember him from Oklahoma last year? I believe, he was there last year. Transfers to West Virginia. He is with Rich Rod. Obviously, Rich Rod runs that spread option offense, so obviously do with our quarterbacks going to help here. He's still in a quarterback battle, but the thinking is in Morgantown that he is probably going to be your starter. And that's the case. Again, given Rich Rod's history over it's Pat White or any of these other quarterbacks he's had over the years, that's going to be a huge asset for them, is having someone that can run the football and potentially could run for 1,000 yards. Again, if you don't remember, Michael Hawkins, the guy can scoot. Now, him throwing the football, not really. Probably not someone I would trust throwing the football more than 20 times in the game. Now, him running the football, yeah, I would. He is that is literally the offense, right? Unlike someone like Keelon Russell or even Fazion Brandon, Michael Hawkins in this West Virginia offense, that is the offense. Okay, that is going to have to be. It's sort of like when you're running a triple option offense, like with Army and Navy. Running quarterbacks are part of the offense. Okay, so if Michael Hawkins, he is going to have to be basically the running offense, and I think that'll be, at least if he is named the starter, that makes sense to me. Again, given Rich Rod's history, that could be interesting to see. And, if that's the case, and if Michael Hawkins plays well, could West Virginia be a surprise team? Don't think so. There's other teams in the Big 12 I would have way more confidence in before West Virginia, because I think West Virginia is probably maybe an extra recruiting class or a transfer portal class away from being decent. But who knows? They could be, they could come out of nowhere if things go correctly. But excuse me, not very likely. But that is another quarterback battle I'm also watching as well. So quarterback battles around the country still going on. Fall camps ending for some. Florida State, West Virginia, or no, not West Virginia. Florida State, TCU, UNC, Virginia, NC State. They've all concluded. They're all done. It's game prep week. And I believe, is it also Rutgers as well? I think Rutgers are they playing someone? Yeah, I think Rutgers is playing UMass too, so they're done with fall camp as well. So quarterback battles, some, or at least a large majority, are decided. A lot of things are being figured out now, but there's still a lot more to be decided. Right, there's still a lot more mystery out there in terms of who will be the starters at other schools. But again, I think for West Virginia and Clemson, there is some clarity there, just not been confirmed yet. So again, I think at Clemson, Vizina, I think we'll at least start the year as QB1, then they'll probably transition to Tate Reynolds. Michael Hawkins at West Virginia just makes sense to me. At least him being the starter over there. Moving really along here. Again, as I mentioned before at the top of the show, we do college football all year round. So if you're new here to YouTube, if you're listening to this show live or listening to this on the replay, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's not really that hard. All you have to do, click the button. I think it's down there somewhere. I don't know. Click the button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the streams, like the videos, follow us on the podcast feed. Again, that's the only place you can get the Four Verticals Extra Pod, which covers college football, but also dives into other stuff that we like here, right? At least I'm a fan of, right? Marvel news, Star Wars news, Buccaneers stuff as well. By the way, I should probably mention this. I will be going to the Bucs preseason game here in Jacksonville. They're practicing with the Jacksonville Jaguars, so I'll be going there Friday before the game. So I'll be there in attendance. So I'll be able to see Jalen Daniels, Kansas legend. Jalen Daniels, probably not a legend, but he'll be there. I'll be seeing Liam Cohen again, second time, or actually third time in person, which is kind of crazy. The once upon a time offensive coordinator at Tampa. I was there last year for the Chargers-Jags game, which is a complete massacre, splattering. So, I'll be up there on Friday checking out the team. Hopefully it won't rain. Don't think it's going to. But, I'll be up there checking out the team, seeing what the practice squad, if you will, looks like for Tampa. And we'll do, I have not forgot, we will be doing their record projection next week. So if you're wondering where that is, that'll be on next week's show. So just keep an eye out for that. Or either this week, I guess, it will be next week because preseason's over after this week. So we'll be doing the record projection next week. So I have not forgotten about that. So but again, like I said, subscribe to the channel, like the streams, like the videos. Be sure to follow us on the socials, X, Twitter, Instagram. Haven't posted on there yet, but maybe we'll start fanning out our production to other places as well. So who knows? Anyway, oh boy, yeah. So the transfer portal. So if you haven't been following, if you've been living under a rock, the transfer portal supposedly was already stopped. It was supposedly closed all the way in January or February. It's still open, at least at the moment. There's still players going in, but not the players you think. It's players from the NFL to college who entered into the draft this past spring, got in, were on practice squads for these NFL teams. All of a sudden, now they're coming back. Now, for the most part, I haven't talked about this a whole lot on the show because mainly, I think it's mostly noise. I don't think it's really that big of a deal. As the saying goes, buy the ticket, take the ride, right? I mean, this is the way college sports are right now. RR. This is the way college sports are right now, okay? Like, there's no, unless there's a governing body, unless there's a commissioner, this is how it's going to be. And I think this situation is really blown up to a point where you're getting a lot of folks' opinions on this. And I'll give you guys the news here, but just really and truly, again, with me, it's like at this point, who really cares? It's like the sports are already a mess. Again, it's, buy the ticket, take the ride. But anyway, so I'm going to bring up here real quick this statement from the SEC. That was released last night. And, a lot of folks were really mad about this because it's basically, if you haven't seen it, it's basically them saying, hey, we're denouncing that players are going to, going from the NFL back to college after they literally declare for the draft. But that's all we're saying. We're not going to do anything about it. And I mentioned on Twitter that if the SEC was smart, if at least I was in charge, I would say, okay, you have two options. Either you decline or reject the players who are attempting to get on SEC rosters that were on NFL rosters to begin with, that were rookies, or you just find the schools and have them write you a check. Okay. So what the graphic I'm going to pull up here is, again, the statement from the SEC League's office, suspiciously late at night. Of course, still, used up something ridiculous like that at night. So let's go ahead and bring this up real quick. Yeah, here it is, the SEC statement. Yeah, I'll go ahead and bring this in for you guys. Let me bring this full screen. So the statement says, after a Monday evening video conference of the presidents and chancellors of the Southeastern Conference, the conference is issuing the following statement. It goes, quote, college athletes, not former professional athletes, have been at the heart of the Southeastern Conference. Individuals who leave college athletics, sign professional playing contracts and compete professionally should not be permitted to return to college competition. Allowing that occur will blur the line between college and professional sports, create significant competitive equity concerns, and reduce opportunities from high school and current college athletes, blah, blah, blah. Basically saying, look, we're denouncing this, okay? We are denouncing this. We are totally, actually, I don't know if this thing actually on, is the graphic on YouTube? I guess it's not on YouTube, or maybe it is. Yeah, it's on YouTube. Okay. Was checking. I have my phone here with the video feed so I can see what it looks like. Anyway, so yeah, basically what this statement is saying is, well, we're denouncing it, but we're not doing anything about it. Okay, so basically we're putting this thing out. We're basically putting out saying, hey, we're denouncing this, or we're saying this is wrong, but we're not saying the key word here, which is we're banning it. We're just saying we're denouncing it. Basically, an example I'll use here would be sort of like the example of, okay, you smash your friend's TV, you say you denounce it, but you don't apologize for it. You just say, oh, it was wrong, or it's wrong to smash TVs, but you just smashed the TV. This is what this is. And a lot of folks are giving the SEC a lot of shit, and rightfully so. There was a bunch of crap. They put this out, but that's it. You're not going to ban anyone. You're not going to fine anyone. You're not going to, basically say, hey, SEC schools, if you're bringing in NFL guys who are on NFL rosters, get your shit together and don't bring these guys in. They didn't do that. They did not do that. So that happened last night. Now, what's happened since then is that the Big Ten and other conferences have been flat out basically saying no players who declare for the NFL draft can come back to member school. Good for them. So they did it, but the SEC did not do, which is basically just say we're not allowing players to do it. Again, The SEC is saying we're denouncing it, but we're not stopping it. So according to P. Nakos from On3, this came out I believe an hour ago. Expectation, and this is from him on X, quote, expectation is that the SEC will talk over a similar rule at today's meetings in Birmingham. Big Ten has meetings later today. Pete's referring to the other conferences, saying, again, if you're a NFL player who declared for this previous draft back in the spring, do not come back. Do not come back. And according to, who was it? Ross Dellinger brought up, similar to what P. Nakos brought up as well, that SEC presidents are expected to direct ADs, the athletic directors, against accepting pro players under the threat of penalty. So it sounds like if they end up, if these schools like LSU with Lane Kiffin, if they end up bringing in these players from the NFL, from these camps, that they will be penalized. So there will be a fine. So it looks like they have gotten the memo they have gotten the memo referring to the backlash. So that's good, at least according to reports here. And again, continuing on with the quote here from Ross Dellinger, per bylaws, Ray Sankey and or presidents hold authority to deem players ineligible, fine or suspend coaches, etc. Will they do it? According to someone that spoke to Ross Dellinger, this is Sankey's Sworsby moment. I agree. I do agree with that. At least in principle, this is a pretty big moment in his time as the SEC commissioner. I mean, if he allows this to happen and they still stand behind the original statement saying, hey, we're denouncing it, but, I don't know, bro. Like, we're going to kind of denounce it, but we're also not going to denounce it. We're still going to let teams kind of do it. I have a theory to bring up here. I'm not going to go, and look, I'm not trying to go like full on like Black Pill Express here, but I figured I'd bring this up here from Bud Elliott. He made this statement a couple of days ago on Cover 3 when this news started to break, and this is fascinating here. His little conspiracy theory. So what Bud brought up here, and this is his statement here, not necessarily mine. He says, quote, what if the NCAA is setting its ass or is getting its ass kicked in the courts on purpose because it needed to be able to complain about rogue judges and an out-of-control system if the bill got through the Senate and into the House? He's referring to, I believe, the whole Protect Sports Act from Cody Campbell that's been going through the House and Senate. So basically what Bud's saying is it's not impossible that the NCAA is basically fabricating an emergency here. Basically saying, okay, in order to get this bill passed through the Senate, let's create some chaos. Let's, fabricate an emergency. Let's let NFL players randomly, who are in the NFL and were in the draft and they got drafted by teams or were undrafted free agents. Let's create an emergency to where we could, I don't know, allow these guys to come back, bro. Like, I don't know, let them come back and go, hey, we have an emergency going on. Maybe this will entice this bill to get through the Senate. Again, not trying to go Black Pill Express here, but I think Bud's theory here definitely has a lot of credence to it. Okay, it just seems really interesting, the timing here, right? You have this ruling change with the class of 2022, the high school class. They have, magically one more year of eligibility, and oh no, there's an emergency. These players are coming back to college. Oh no, we better go back to the Senate and hopefully this game gets passed through. I'm not saying this is like what's actually happening. Again, I'm not trying to go Black Pill Express here, but I think Bud Elliott's theory here of, the NCAA fabricating an emergency to help get this bill get passed through the Senate, I believe that's what he's trying to say here. It's not impossible to think. I know that sounds really crazy. I know that sounds like, pie in the sky, conspiracy theory, put on your tinfoil hat. I just don't think I don't think this is beyond believability. I think it's definitely possible that this is going on. They're fabricating an emergency to get whatever this bill is going to be through the House and the Senate, because it hasn't done so yet. They're on, if you don't, follow the U.S. political system, the Senate, Congress, and all that, they're on recess. So they won't be back until, September, middle of September, whatever. So there's a long time until this thing gets passed. So what I'm trying to say here is that this chaos, unless the SEC doesn't do something to stop this, which sounds like they're going to join the Big Ten and these other conferences, that there will be some sort of a resolution here to this emergency. Again, I feel like Bud's theory here probably true. So again, like I said earlier, buy the ticket, take the ride. I mean, look, with no guardrails in place, no commissioner in the sport, this is what's going to happen. So, again, buy the ticket, take the ride. It is what it is. So that's it for the show. Less than an hour. How about that? I know a lot of folks who I've talked to privately have said, these hour-long shows can, be grueling and whatnot. I kind of agree with them, but I can't necessarily guarantee that next Tuesday's show, our big week 1 preview, is going to be less than an hour. Probably won't be less than an hour, but who knows? Anyway, we have to get out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this live or watching this on the replay, again, subscribe. Podcast feed, YouTube. That's all we ask. Excuse me. We'll be back on Thursday. I believe we will we do an extra pod this week? I don't know. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. Who knows? So that to be determined, but we should be back on Thursday. Again, we'll be doing our prediction for the Virginia-NC State game. So if you're wondering where that game was today, if you're a fan of those teams, don't worry. We're still going to do that game, but we'll do it on Thursday's show. And along with any other breaking news, and look, if anything happens tomorrow, we'll probably do a breaking news video here. So be on the lookout for that regarding the whole transfer portal crisis that's going on. Again, sounds like the SEC is reversing course, and they kind of saw the backlash last night from a lot of pretty high profile people. So we'll see. But again, like I said, and I'll say it again one last time, buy the ticket, take the ride. It is what it is. And you guys create the mess. I mean, it's your personal hell. May as well enjoy it. So until next time on Thursday, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Enjoy your Wednesday. Take